Hi everyone, here's another devlog with updates on my process, creating the upcoming simulation game, Setup Simulator. So, a couple of things have happened since last video. First off, I'm only one person making the game now. That also means I had to change a few things in the plan. Secondly, I finished a free little teaser game for you guys to play, to show you guys the concept of Setup Simulator. But we'll get back to all that later in this video. But what this video is actually about is how I started from this and got to this, and turned this into that, and that into this, and most importantly how I got this to turn into that. Back then when me and John decided to make this concept game, it was for the purpose of showing you guys what it feels like to build a setup virtually. This concept game has much fewer features than what we planned for the real game to have, though there is no other substitute out there, so we wanted to give you guys something to try out. But had I known I was gonna end up developing everything by myself, then I wouldn't have made the concept game. Cause when I'm only one person developing the game and I have to move all my focus and labor to the concept game, then 100% of the focus and labor is taken away from the actual game. Though that's too late to change now. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. I was creating the website and working on the 3D game, and John was making the concept game. After a few weeks he got pretty far, so I started making the art using Adobe XD. I made both UI and game objects. These were the first few tries, but I just wasn't happy with the results. So I tried over and over again, and I quickly learned that shadows and highlights could do a lot to the game objects. Then I also realized that the room and background just wasn't working, cause the background was trying too much to look realistic, but in reality it just made it look more like a rip-off. So I decided to go with something more original and hypothetic, with a background that wasn't supposed to look like anything, but it's more like an abstract image. Then there was only the UI that wasn't matching. So I scrapped everything and started all over. I went for a more modern style, which fit the background much better. John was now done with the placement system and gotten pretty far with the PC building system. He started implementing the art bit after bit. Though I thought the code was pretty inefficient, I just told myself that it's his part and it's not the launch game, so let it be. Well, this ended up biting me in the ass later on. Cause one day John he called and he said that he couldn't continue. This came as a shock to me. I mean, after having been working with him for almost a year now, this just felt so strange and unreal. I literally couldn't see this happening. It felt like a nightmare. But I understood why, and this was due to some personal reasons which we don't need to dig into. But it has been great having him. I swear I would never have gotten this far without him. I loved having someone there who I could show my progress to and would be just as happy as I was to see it. It was so motivating. And if I wanted to quit, I was gonna have to let John down, which motivated me to always continue. And although I took a day off, I would still see progress, since I wasn't the only person working on the project. So, what do I do now, since this is obviously too large of a project for one person? I'm going to launch an Indiegogo campaign in the beginning of this August, and hopefully get some financial help to make this game a possibility. Cause this game has been my dream for so long, so I won't quit because of that. I've been working on this game every day for almost 10 months now, and I would just love to be able to finish it. But back to the video. So John left and I now stood alone with the game. And this is the time that I knew that I fucked up. Remember that I told you that I felt like the code was a little inefficient? Now I had to complete the game with that as my starting point. There was luckily some good commenting and many features implemented. So I decided to start over, since I wasn't a fan of how the entire game was laid out, with every game object being a button with its own script on it. And there were just a lot of things that didn't help the performance. Not to shit talk the code, but every developer just has their own solution. and I would rather make a game where things work how I want them to. And especially when I knew it was supposed to be played in a browser, so it had to be efficient. Luckily I still had all the art made. I felt pretty stressed after he left, and I worked on the game as soon as he told me. I even did 2 all-nighters in a row to keep up with his schedule. So I started making the placement system, which didn't take too long. Just like the 3D version of Setup Simulator, I just raycast it from the mouse, and if the player clicked on an object, it would be picked up. Then I implemented a shop, and every category contained an array of game objects. And then I added some nice animations. Then I started making the PC building system. All parts were scriptable objects containing information about the part. When building a PC, the case would spawn, and it would have 7 scriptable objects on it, each containing information about a certain part. Finally, I made the PC overview with a nice benchmark system. All this happened in 1.5 weeks of straight everyday programming, but after this I finally felt less stressed. I got my artist to make me this nice homepage, and then I made a little tutorial thing. I made some settings and some sound effects to make the game actions feel more meaningful, and then I only had to turn the rest of the sprites into prefabs. I made a splash screen as a final touch, and then I was done. I had some trouble putting the game on my website. First off, itch.io made my game have weird scaling issues. Then I tried simmer.io. There I couldn't upload the file. It actually took me a couple of days to find a solution to how I could get my game on the website. In the end I used simmer.io. The reason to why I couldn't upload my WebGL build was that the file had to be named WebGL build. It was finally working and it was playable on my website. So I contacted my friends to help me playtest it. It made me realize how far I actually were from done. Wow, who would have known that these two are actually touching each other? Now you can place keyboards on each other. Either that's a very large computer or a very tiny mouse. If you want to have your hardware lay on the floor, you just... So I fixed all the bugs. It took me a day or two. I sent it to my friends again. It worked with no bugs. Though the game wasn't fun longer than 5 or 10 minutes, since the action didn't really have impact. So I made an achievement system. This gave the game impact and progression. So I sent it to my friends for the 3rd time, and this time everything just worked. The only thing was that you could tell that the achievement system was a bit rushed. It took me about a month to make this game with everyday programming. But making this game teaches me a thing or two about making a setup based game. And it prevents me from making these mistakes in the 3D game. Those things are progression and impact. So first off, you need to achieve something when playing the game. And then when you do stuff in the game, it should really feel like you changed something. For example, sound effects and animations on actions really makes a difference. A good example where this game lacked an impact were when you got your benchmark result. No sound effects and no animations. A good example of how this is made in the right way is when you open a case in CSGO. But this was just a good practice, and I feel like I got a lot of experience I can use for the 3D game. If you want to try the game, I have it on my website, setupsimulator.com. And if you want to get closer to the development, join the Discord. Here you can have an influence on the game, where you can suggest features and answer polls. Links in the description.